I call to order the regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly for August 7th, 2012. Mr. Birch, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Madam Clerk, do the roll call.
Present. Here. Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Johnston.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Ms. Hosiander. Mr. Flynn. Present. Mr. Birch.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have before us minutes of previous meetings for the regular meeting of May 22nd, 2012. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Okay, any changes? Seeing, hearing none, anyone opposed? These minutes are approved as presented. Mayor's report, Mr. Vacalis.
Well, sir, since the mayor is not here, I think it would be very appropriate to hear from the Youth Employment in the Parks program.
Hello, I'm Beth Nordland with the Anchorage Park Foundation, and I would like to introduce to you the Class of 2012 Youth Employment in Parks program. This is our 6th year of youth employment in parks. I can't believe it, but it's true. I just confirmed. This is a 10-week program. They focus on waterways, forests, trails, and work in parks of all of your districts. You have in front of you a map that says We Reflect Anchorage. It shows where all of the teens live approximately and how many languages they speak and their ethnic origins and their ages. I know you're quite interested in how many red dots are in your own districts, and that stands for where the teens live. And also the green dots are where the projects were this summer. They have only one more week of work. Tomorrow is the final, we're on our final week of work. This is it. Tomorrow is the final dinner, and we are in mentorship week right now. On Thursday, there's going to be some job shadowing with people in the community. And so you are getting the YEP presentation this year at the very end when they are sufficiently transformed. And hopefully you've seen the results of the projects all around town. They're going to introduce themselves one by one, their name and their district, and I think they'll tell you what their favorite project was that they worked on this summer. We will be quick, but hopefully very responsive to what you're interested in. Thank you. And
my name is Wayne Gatt. I'm 17. I'm a senior crew member. My favorite project, I would have to say, would be the Valley Street Park, just because of the fact that the people in the community really appreciated it. Section 5.
Hi, my name is Grace Mitton. I'm 18 and I'm from Section 6. My favorite project was Westchester Lagoon because I've enjoyed seeing the impact YEP's had on it over the last couple years.
Hi, my name is Sean Hasty. I'm from District 3. I'm 18 and my favorite project was Valley Street Park because it's sunny out all week.
Good evening. My name is Angelica Hess, and I'm 18 years old, and I'm from Section 6. My favorite YEP project was probably University Lake, where we did bank restoration, but that wasn't my favorite part. My favorite part was because it's where the YEP members became closer as a team.
Hi, my name is Katie Collane. I'm 17 years old and I live in Section 6. My favorite project this year would probably have to be Beaver Pond Trail because each day I got to do something different.
Hi, my name is Noah Otto. I'm from Section 6. I'm 16 years old, and my favorite project this year was the Valley Street Park because it made such a noticeable difference in the park.
Hi, my name is Kristen Leafy. I'm 18. I'm from Section 1, and my favorite project this year was working out in Girdwood because we burned a lot of calories walking back and forth what seemed like 20 miles in and out of that trail.
Hello, my name is Brianna Tobin. I'm 18 and I'm from Section 6. My favorite project this summer has been doing the University Lake stream bank restoration because it was our first week, and even though it poured rain the entire time, we all had a great time and got everything done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Quentin Hamilton. I'm 18. I'm from Section 2, and I like Valley Street because it was challenging.
Hello, my name is Tracy Butler. I'm from Section 4. I'm 17. My favorite project was Westchester Lagoon because I love the fact that the kids came up to us constantly and kept thanking us for the projects that we've done.
Hi, I'm Courtney Abed. I'm 17. My favorite project with YAP was Sand Lake because I saw the impact that it had on the community.
Hi, I'm Jordan Ledoux. I'm 17 years old. I live in Section 6. My favorite project was probably Sand Lake because I grew up fishing there, and I know that I'll definitely go back and see the project.
Hello, my name is Alex Zimmerman. I am 19 years old. I live in District 5, and my favorite youth employment in the parks would have to be University Lake because we worked in all weather conditions, and also we learned how to veg mat, and we also learned gravel and bank restoration as well, and it was just awesome to see our accomplishments.
Good evening, my name is Marvin Argueta. I am 16. I live in Section 6. My favorite project this summer would have to be Valley Street just because it was a huge visual impact.
Hi, my name is Gage Raymond. I'm 16. I live in Section 6, and my favorite project was Sand Lake because it's one of the ones I get to go to all the time, and it was good to see the change.
Hello, I'm Xavier Spearman. I'm 17, Section 5. My favorite summer thing was Sand Lake because we got to make a light penetrating boardwalk.
Hi, my name is Nate Bennett. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Section 4. My favorite project for this summer was Margaret Egan Sullivan Park. We got to lay down new topsoil and sod for that part. All right, bye.
Good evening. My name is Adan Acuna. I'm 16 years old, and I live in Section 4. My favorite project this summer was Westchester Lagoon Park because it was such an open space environment.
Hi, I'm Claire Lepke. I'm 16 years old, and I live in Section 4. My favorite project this summer was definitely Valley Street because we went into an area that was barely recognizable as a park, and we worked on a trail that kids were already using to get to school, and at the end of it, I felt confident that it would be useful and beneficial.
Hi, my name is Katie Bond. I'm 18 years old. I live in Section 6. My favorite project was Valley Street because even as we were working on the trail, people were walking by and admiring our work and telling us how much they liked it.
Hi, my name is Amanda Garner. I'm 16 years old. I live in Section 2, and my favorite project was Sand Lake because we got to build a boardwalk.
Hello, my name is Shauna Strain. I'm from Section 5. My favorite project would have to be Davis Park because I know all our hard work will be seen and everyone will actually use it, and it will be a benefit to the community.
Hi, my name is A. Zong. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Section 5, and my favorite project this summer was Valley Street Park because we had to interact with the community.
So thank you very much for listening to that presentation. You may have questions either about the projects or with some of the program that we offer. We do education and recreation, and I think they had a great summer bonding over poor weather conditions, but good ones too, and great projects in, I think, every district.
We're not going to let you off that easy, Mr. Nordland. I've got Ms. Gray Jackson in the queue.
Mr. Chairman, I was in the queue for something else, but thank you anyway. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your hard work this summer and helping to beautify our city. It's a wonderful thing. And Ms. Nordland, again, thank you for all you do for our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will come back to you, Ms. Gray Jackson. In the queue, Mr. Horniman.
Well, I wanted to say again the same thing, and I know last year I don't think I missed but maybe two of them. This year I was out of town for a bit of the early goings of the project, so I'm sorry I didn't make it out to work with some of you, but appreciate all the work that you've done for our community to make it better and cleaner and neater and more usable for the folks in the park. And I really enjoyed hearing, particularly the ones where the kids came up to you and actually thanked you, and that you're recognizing that it is an important, the parks play an important role in our community. So thank you again. How many golden bears? I see a couple there. Way to go. It looks like we had quite a few projects in our section as well as quite a few members on the team. So thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, kudos to all of you, the directors as well. And back in a different century, I also served my Parks and Rec department in the capacity, and it worked out pretty well. I learned a tremendous skill and was able to learn the landscaping trade and put myself through college with that skill, and still landscape to these days. It's so much fun outdoors, and when you get to create things with your hands and watch them grow, perhaps come back. I'm interested in the stewardship of the lands as well, and the ownership exampling that you put out. I saw your crews out there a fair amount. I drive around a lot, and it was refreshing to see the vigor and that, and then the ambassadorship to our community. That's what we try to do as elected officials, but you guys are out there in the users groups. And I guess it's Mr. Meyer. Do you really, is he here? I didn't hear him identify himself. I missed it. Derek Meyer?
Derek.
Do you really speak 11 languages? Or when it says represent, what does it say here? It has the ability to speak fluent language in 11 different countries.
It was supposed to be a joke, and it was fluent English in 11 different countries.
Well, no joke. It's a worthy goal. I think, you see a lot of multilingual folks, so if you've got that capacity early on, you're underutilized. Great. Thanks for being here. Appreciate the humor and the lightness. It's great.
Derek is our field educator, and he tries to make the work they're doing, the hard work that they're doing, relevant to what they're learning about our parks and our ecosystems that we're managing.
Well, work and fun go together. They really do. Thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
Well, I appreciate everything that all of you do. I wanted to point out that Mr. Butler, as you present yourself up here at age 17, I'm confident that you'll make a very fine Marine. So congratulations on joining the Marine Corps.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Birch.
I just wanted to congratulate the group as well. I was very pleased to see South Anchorage and Section 6 so well represented in the group. I also took a particular note of the fact that for 11 of our group here, this is their first employment. And I think that's, I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't remember their first job. And I think it's certainly a tribute to each and every one of you for your good efforts. And we look forward to enjoying those trails and projects that you've improved on this year. Thank you.
I'm going to do cleanup today, and I get to do it wearing two hats. One is chair of the Assembly, and the other as a board member of the Anchorage Park Foundation. And I want to begin by telling you, Ms. Nordland, what a remarkable job you do on that foundation, running it, and the difference it's made in this community. And to all of you, over the years we've been doing this, it's phenomenal what's happened to the parks in this community, and a great deal of that goes to each and every one of you. So thank you very much. We look forward to this continuing a long time into the future in this community.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your financial support. You folks support Youth Employment in Parks every year. And also thank you to the mayor and the mayor's staff for allowing us to use some of the mayor's time each year to present the great work of these municipal employees.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment and request under the mayor's report. I see he's not here, but Mr. Michaelis is. And I'd just like to start out by saying I really, really appreciate the way this administration works really hard to try and find efficiencies for our government. That's really important. I'm a big proponent of finding efficiencies. But I was thinking lately about, I don't know, a little more than a year ago, both the authorities for MLMP and AWW were appealed, and I didn't vote for that. And so what I like to see now, a year later, is I'd like for the administration to provide a summary that shows all of this body of what efficiencies have been realized since the appeal in terms of labor savings and other costs for general government, for MLMP, and for AWW. I like to see that summary, and I'd like for all of us to have a copy of that. And again, thank you for working hard to find efficiencies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gray Jackson. We'll move into reports. We'll begin with the Assembly Chair's report. And the really neat thing is I don't have anything to report this week. It seems that ever since I've taken this chair, I've had to come back and give some kind of dismal news in regards to the election. And I'm very pleased to say that I feel we are truly heading in the right direction. We're getting some great new staff into the clerk's office, great new ombudsman in place, and I see nothing but bright days coming for us. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to report that. Committee reports, Mr. Birch.
I would participate. I had an opportunity to participate in the Ethics Committee training, the Election and Ethics Committee training, chaired by Mr. Tromley. Last week. It was very well presented, and as I understand it, that will be a continuing and ongoing effort on the part of this body on an annual basis. So, good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The AMET's Technical Advisory Committee meets this Thursday, and then the Policy Committee 2 Thursdays hence. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Ms. Ostrander.
Last night, the Planning and Zoning Commission finished the last chapter, Chapter 10, the Chugiak Eagle River chapter, and ready to forward to us. Mr. Weaver and I have been talking about schedule, and he has requested that we actually take a little break on August 16th and 23rd. I'd already canceled the 16th, but I'm also going to cancel the 23rd at his request. And I will tomorrow or Thursday at the committee meeting share the schedule that's been before us, that's been put before us. It basically has us finishing the end of September in our look through the chapters. Next meeting on the 9th, we'll be going with 8 and then 11 and 13, both which should be fairly quick chapters. So everyone's welcome to come, 9:30 to 11:30, Planning Department Conference Room.
Thank you, Ms. Ostrander. Mr. Trombley.
Ethics and Elections Committee met last Friday, had ethics training, and for the members that were not able to attend, I'll work with the chairman to set another date, which does work for everybody else, sooner than later. I also sent out an email probably two and a half weeks ago regarding the Ethics and Elections Committee meeting on the 14th. What I've requested from Assembly members is to go through the 4 reports that we now have. And the first one would be Judge Hensley's report and the supplemental. What I've requested is that you go through that report. We're going to have a work session in September on that report with Judge Hensley. What I'd like to do is to filter specific questions that you have for him. If you could send those questions to me, we'll deal with those questions on the meeting of the 14th, remove redundancies, and then what I'll do is I will forward those on to the chair, and he'll give those to Judge Hensley so he can address specific questions that the Assembly has so that there's some order to the work session that we have with him. The other thing that I've asked the committee members to do, and obviously any member of the Assembly as well, is to go through the 4 reports that we do have, Judge Hensley's, Mr. Gasway's report, and I sent an email that I'm blanking the other 2, the one, Mr. Friedman's report, and, the election committee's, the election commission's report as well. And if you could forward me changes to Title 28 that you would like, that way also at the meeting of the 14th, we're going to go through all those amendments that you would like to see changed in Title 28. We'll go through those, remove redundancies. I will then take those and pass them along for a legal review. And the reason I'm doing that is before we bring them to the body is that some changes that myself or any other assembly member would like to make may or may not actually be technically legal to do. And so I'd like to eliminate those that are not legal to do for whatever reason. And that way we can focus on the changes that we actually can make. And so that way we're not going to bog down Assembly Counsel's office with a bunch of amendments that are not applicable. So my request is that you get those to me on the 10th of August so I have time to sort through those for the meeting on the 14th. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Mr. Starr.
Well, to that end, I'd like to maybe ask Mr. Trombley a question with your interjection as well. Just a moment. Well, I'll wait for you to put out a little bit more information on some of the changes in the clerk's office, because I would have some accountability questions as to how we can handle accountability through the clerk's office to this body. I'm not sure changes need to be made. So do we best bring that up in the 14th committee, or should I take those suggestions up with the chair? How do you want to handle that?
I think it would be helpful to go through the committee on that. That way we're doing with everything. That way, are you talking about policy questions as well?
Yeah, because general reporting in, the clerk's office oversees elections and does report to us. So some of it's codified, but some of it's also just good practice.
Sure. I don't think it'd be a difficult thing to centralize it that way. It's all coming from one area and we're not spread out.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take it up in committee then from that angle. And I have no finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Ms. Johnston. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee met last Friday, August 3rd, and we had 2 items on the agenda. The first item was Internal Audit Report 2012-7, Police and Fire Retiree Medical Trust 2-year review. The committee reviewed a resolution that was approved by the Trust Board, and it recommended changes to the code to clarify the administration of the trust. Of course, recommendations for changes to the code to the Assembly, of course. Well, the committee felt that the recommended changes were not sufficient to address all of the concerns regarding the program's administrators' reporting responsibilities. So with a little bit of discussion, I decided, and everybody agreed, that we would establish an ad hoc committee so that we can discuss once again and work through the issues addressed in the audit. And I feel confident that this time we will get somewhere. Just so everybody knows, I am going to send out an email to schedule a meeting in the near future, and I'd like for the municipal manager, the attorney, our attorney, Mr. Trombley, the ER director, internal auditor, and 2 members of the trust board to be on this ad hoc committee. And I don't think it's going to take a long time at all. I think we're going to work really hard and get through this and simply move on. And the second item of discussion on the audit committee agenda was the religious property tax exemption, ABT. And the reason why I added this to the agenda for discussion was because I felt that, reading about the results of the investigation in the Daily News was quite inappropriate. That was the first time the Assembly knew or read anything about it, so I thought it made sense for the municipal assessor to come to the audit committee and give a report on this, and also answer some questions that we had from constituents. Mr. McGee provided a really good summary of the investigation and the results, and he answered questions that our constituent had. And he also did finally provide a copy of the investigative report to all Assembly members, which you find in your packets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gray Jackson. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, the Public Safety Committee of the Assembly did not meet in July, but tomorrow is the meeting for August at noon at the Assembly Conference Room 155. And on the topic is discussion for 2013 staffing and budget concerns, anything the Assembly needs to know about for the coming year preparation. Also, talking with the chief about an update, hopefully from the police department, about the use of force issues in the community. I know, again, I was out of town in July, but we had several constituent concerns regarding that. And then most recently, we'll also have, we hope, some sort of a dialogue with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, possibly Jesse Coltrane or company, about the bears and wildlife in our big wildlife city of Anchorage. And some concerns, particularly in our district, over in District 5, recently a black bear sow was shot and 3 cubs had to be euthanized. So concerns about what we're doing as a city, also what the state is doing as far as wildlife management. I know this is not the first time this has been brought up before this community or this body, so I just need to get an update to see where we're at. And to the extent, just like to tag along with Ms. Gray Jackson's request to the administration, the efficiencies gained through the MLP and AWU with its consolidation and I guess you'd say reorganization under the title. I'd like to see that number. And then additionally, and this is through the administration, perhaps through legal, had a recent couple of actual concerns in the community with bath salts and spice. You know, we were ahead of the state, if you will, in passing our ordinances criminalizing it, both spice and then bath salts, 2 successive years. And, you know, most recently, one of the officer-involved shootings, the blood test results came back with the bath salts, I believe, is what one of the persons had on board. So, you know, to the extent possible, is our law sufficient? Are we needing to change to try to keep up with adapting things of that nature? So I guess I'd appreciate some dialogue from the legal department and also, you know, from our law department, also from the chief. Have we had any investigations or charges or seizures of bath salts or spice from any businesses in our community or anywhere in our community? So I'd like to know that if we could, and I'll talk to the chief tomorrow again in Public Safety Committee. So welcome tomorrow at noon, Assembly Conference Room 155. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Mr. Starr. Ms. Osiander.
Mr. Honeman, there are some parts of the rewritten Title 21 that specifically deal with the bear issue. I'd be happy to share that with you later on if you're interested. Thank you.
Mr. Trainey.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainey. Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Thank you. This brings us to our addendum to the agenda for this evening. I take a motion to incorporate. Okay. I will read the addendum into the minutes. Under item 9A1, resolution number 195, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and remembering philanthropist Mary Louise Rasmussen. 9A2, resolution number 196, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Craig Willard for his service for the municipality of Anchorage. 9A3, resolution number 197, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Diane Engel, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, for her dedication to public health and for her years to the community. Item 9B2, resolution number 198, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly authorizing the Mountain View Community Council and the Anchorage Community Land Trust to proceed with development of a Mountain View neighborhood plan as approved sponsors with support from the appropriate municipal agencies as provided by Anchorage Municipal Code subsection 21.05.155A.2. 9C2, Assembly Memorandum Number 478, a recommendation of awards to Annette's Trucking Incorporated for the 73rd and 74th Avenue Storm and Water Construction for the municipality of Anchorage. Item 9C3, Assembly Memorandum 79, a recommendation of award to several Senate districts for road rehabilitation projects for the municipality of Anchorage. 9D8, under new business, Assembly Memorandum Number 480, sole source purchase with Chugach Electric Association Incorporated, CAE, to provide electric distribution extension services for the municipality of Anchorage water and wastewater utility in the amount of $60,000. 9D9, Assembly Memorandum 481, change order number 4 to purchase order number 20110895 with Resource Data Incorporated to provide a project manager for the Enterprise Resource Planning application project for the municipality of Anchorage Information Technology Department, $200,000. 9D10, Assembly Memorandum Number 482, change order number 5 to purchase order number 20110669 with FE Contracting Incorporated to provide Harry J. McDonald Center expansion for the municipality of Anchorage, Public Works Department and Maintenance Operation Division, the amount of $74,228. And 9D11, Assembly Memorandum Number 483, cooperative purchase of VH radio transmitters from Daniels Electronic Limited for the municipality of Anchorage Department of Public Works Maintenance and Operation Division in the amount of $56,921.98. That is all of the addendum to the agenda. Any opposing, incorporating? Seeing, hearing none, the addendum is incorporated. We're now back to the incorporated consent agenda. Okay, got a motion and a second. Items to be pulled. Mr. Birch.
No items.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify on 9 Delta 7, if I could pull that, please.
Delta 7.
That is correct.
Ms. Osiander?
Nothing.
Mr. Trombley?
No items.
Mr. Starr?
9 Bravo 2. It's off the addendum.
Okay. Ms. Johnston? No items, thank you. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the addendum to the agenda, 9 Alpha 3. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson. Mr. Horniman?
No items, Your Honor. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Drummond?
No items, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to
I'm going
9 Alpha 2 so we can honor
yes.
the gentleman in the audience? I'll pull that one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flynn. 9A2.
He pulled Bravo 2. What about 9A1?
Okay, any other items to be pulled? Okay, I would now, any opposition to approving the consent agenda? Might less the items pulled.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, could you read the items pulled one more time?
9A2, 9A3, 9B2, D7.
Thank you.
Okay. Any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing, hearing none, the consent agenda is pulled. Before us, we have on the addendum item 9A2, resolution number 196, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Craig Woolard for his service with the municipality of Anchorage. Ms. Gray-Jackson, did you pull that one? No, you pulled 3. Mr. Flynn.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Flynn, will you read, please?
This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly. Come on down, Craig. Recognizing and honoring Craig Woolard for his service with the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Craig Woolard was appointed to the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Advisory Commission by Mayor Begich in March of 2003 while on the faculty of the University of Alaska Anchorage. Let that be a lesson to you, all those who we appoint to commissions. And whereas Dr. Woolard joined the staff of the utility in June of 2006 as the Treatment Division Director, And whereas Dr. Willard was named the general manager of the utility by Mayor Dan Sullivan on September 13, 2011, and whereas Dr. Willard was educated at Montana State University, receiving a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and at the University of Notre Dame, where he earned the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Civil Engineering, and whereas as a researcher and consultant, Dr. Willard made significant contributions to the water and wastewater industry, publishing numerous works on various municipal and industrial water and wastewater treatment applications, and whereas, as a faculty member, Dr. Willard was successful in implementing programs and facilities within the university structure to attract an expanding number of students while fostering research and creative activities, including cooperating on establishing a strong intern program between the universities and AWU, resulting in more than 65 students performing internships at AWU. And whereas Dr. Willard has been an outstanding contributor to the profession, serving in numerous roles in the Alaska Water and Wastewater Management Association, receiving the prestigious Fuller Award for service in 2003. And whereas Dr. Willard's professional service continued at the highest levels, taking over the role of president of the American Water Works Association, the leading organization of the industry with over 50,000 members worldwide. And whereas Dr. Willard led the implementation of significant operational and institutional developments in the treatment division and the utility overall, integrating modern tools and technology into daily operations. And whereas in his brief tenure as general manager, Dr. Willard has demonstrated the highest regard for the professionalism of the utility at all levels, while working continually to advance the goals and objectives expressed by the AWU Board of Directors and the municipal administration. And whereas Dr. Willard clearly exemplifies the values and professionalism, integrity, teamwork, safety, respect, continuous improvement, and humor in his professional and daily life. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Anchorage Assembly hereby recognizes and honors Craig R. Willard, Ph.D. and P.E., for his service as the general manager of AWU and to the citizens of Anchorage, and, in that role, for his contributions to improving the public health of this city, the state of Alaska, our nation, and the world, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this day.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I'm standing here with mixed emotions. I am happy to be going back to my home state of Montana, to be closer to my family, but I am very sad to be leaving my friends and colleagues at the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility. They are really great people, and I'm going to miss them. So I have one last shot, if you will. So tonight, with my last turn at the podium, I want to leave you with 3 thoughts. First of all, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to George Vikalis. I have very much enjoyed working with you. You have been very good to me and a wonderful person to work with. I very much appreciate the outstanding job you do keeping this city running every day. And I appreciate your leadership and support. But most importantly, I want to thank the staff at the AWW. They do an outstanding job in all the things that they do. If I've had any measure of success in my time at AWW, it is solely because of the great staff we have there, and occasionally I have the good sense to stay out of their way. I wish really I did have the time, and really I wish I had the words to describe what they do every day to protect the public health of this community. I don't think this community does not really understand what they have in the staff at AWW. They are true professionals and true craftsmen in the truest sense of the word, and it has been an honor to work with them, and it's really been truly the highlight of my career. So second, I want to leave you with a second message, which is you have a world-class utility that delivers best-in-class service at average prices. By any objective measure, this utility performs at the top of its peer group. We constantly evaluate ourselves with other utilities, and in many cases, other utilities look to us for advice on what to do. We use the best industry practice in how we implement technology and how we manage our assets and how we treat our people. So I think it's worth repeating, if you take one thing away from tonight in my tenure as the general manager, it's that you do have a best-in-class utility that delivers quality service at average rates. It is something that I was very proud to be a part of, and that's something I really hope you appreciate. And finally, I want to leave you with some words of advice, maybe words of warning. There is not much you all can do to make the utility better. but there is a lot you can do to screw it up. And as I told the mayor and his staff at our budget meeting the other day, I think the organization has been pushed to the limit where you're starting to play with its ability to perform at the level that it has historically has, and that our customers and the members of this community have come to expect. So please, please be careful about what changes you ask for and approve in the future. Listen to your staff, listen to the board, listen to members of this community. They will give you good advice and help you make good decisions. Thank you again for the opportunity to serve as the general manager. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate the nice words. Thank you.
You don't get off that easy. Miss Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Craig, it seems like just yesterday we were confirming your appointment. Now we're saying goodbye.
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment and thank you very much for your service and seize this opportunity to thank the staff and let you know that I am one person that I really do recognize what a great staff there is over there at AWWU. And I am grateful that I did have one opportunity, myself, Mr. Trainey and Ms. Drummond, to meet with you and your staff, with our constituents. And I was really pleased that, gosh, a department director was there at a constituent meeting helping out. I really appreciated that, and I won't forget it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Ms. Osiander.
I want to echo some of what Ms. Gray Jackson just said. My experience with the utility employees has been nothing but exemplary. I do think that it's a very well-run organization. I continue to have frustrations with tariff regulations, and I'm going to continue to squawk about that one probably after I'm off this body. I do, though, want to tell you I wish you the best, and I regret your going because it does seem like you just came. I'm just getting to know you. So, too bad about that.
Well, thank you.
But thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Horniman.
Mr. Wills, thanks again for stepping up when Mr. Primo left. I know those were huge shoes to fill, a very professional, dedicated workforce at AWU. You didn't get a chance to see them. They gave you another standing O just in closing of your remarks, and well-deserved. So sad to see you go. I wish you good luck and safer travels back to Montana. And it's a great place to be going to, I suppose, although I'm not sure your winters are going to be much better than what we get up here.
Hopefully they will. Yeah.
This time. But anyway, you're absolutely right. I wrote down what you were saying, and I hope that we don't get in the way, and that the utility continue to provide the best service possible to its ratepayers, and I know that they'll try to do nothing less. So I appreciate that. Thank you for all your service.
Mr. Starr.
Well, good luck and good travels.
Thank you.
The snow flies. Be sure you look us up when you move back. I appreciate your direct comments and respect for your position of adopting, and I like the ability for you to communicate right up to the end on the wishes. One of the challenges that I see coming up is next meeting we're going to appropriate about $100 million in capital improvement opportunities for the utility. Should there be more note of caution on our ability to oversee that? I know you said don't get in there and mess with it, but the accountability on the $100 million investment, should we be concerned that that's going to be well handled, or are you comfortable the way things are going to handle it?
Let me answer that question in two parts.
Please do.
I think we have a very solid capital program at the utility. So the projects that we identify and what we need to do to keep the infrastructure functioning and serving our ratepayers, I have no doubt whatsoever, not the slightest doubt, that capital program is solid, well vetted, and as good as any capital program in the country. On the aspect of how to finance that is a question you'll need to ask the CFO. Right? That is a atypical financing. I will say this: that is an atypical financing option that for utilities. It will require some oversight. Yes, I do think you're very well-founded in being concerned about that, and I would pay very close attention to it.
Great. Well, thanks for that, and,
Yep.
and what your legacy is. I know you haven't taken credit for a lot of that as you pass it to your staff, but good leadership is that. We see the Girdwood project moving along, and we see this next capital program with your name all over it, too. So thank you very much for what you've done for our community.
Thank you.
Mr. Vacalis.
Well, Craig, on behalf of the mayor, I certainly want to convey on his behalf our thanks for a job well done. I wish it would have been much longer, but he certainly appreciates, as does the rest of the administration, everything that you've done and your folks have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Birch.
Well, it's always nice to see an engineer make good, and I sure wish you all the best in your new endeavors. You can be very proud of the work you've accomplished here, and very much appreciate your efforts in supporting our work in South Anchorage and citywide in making it a better utility. Thank you.
Very good. Craig, it's been an honor, and you made your organization very proud. So,
thank you very much. Thank you.
And I would like, please, go ahead. I need to do a bit of housekeeping. I failed to ask if there were no objection, and seeing none will show that that was passed unanimously. We now have before us item 9A3, resolution number 197, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Diane Engel, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, for her dedication to public health and for her service to the community. Mayor Sullivan. Mayor Sullivan. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to read, and someone else is going to present.
Before you read that, let me pick up my little piece of business. Is there no objection? Let this show unanimous approval. Thank you.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Diane Engel, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, for her dedication to public health and for her service to the community. Whereas Diane Engel has been working in the field of public health for over 25 years to improve the lives of Alaskans. And whereas after majoring in mathematics at the University of Alaska, she started her career in the state of Alaska Department of Health and Human Services in Information Technology and Data Analysis. And whereas she came to the municipality of Anchorage in 2004 to be division manager of the community health section of DHHS. And whereas she rose through the ranks first to deputy director, then on to director in August of 2007. And whereas Director Engel has served in that capacity under 3 mayors. And whereas she has been intimately involved in improving the lives of the citizens of Anchorage in a wide variety of programs, partnerships, and initiatives, from child care to the safety of our restaurants to the health of infants, teens, adults, and seniors. And whereas under the Sullivan administration, she worked to make strides in addressing issues of homelessness and strengthening community partnerships to make that possible. And whereas she was selected specifically by the Mexican consulate to partner with them to increase public health education and service access to the consulate's constituency. And whereas Diane Engel has worked tirelessly, not just externally with outside organizations and partners, but also in her own department to develop and mentor dedicated staff. And whereas she has often said that nothing is more rewarding than making a difference in your hometown. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves to recognize the Department of Health and Human Services Director, Diane Engel, for her years of service and dedication, not only to the municipality of Anchorage, but also to the entire state of Alaska, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly the 7th day of August 2012.
Okay, so just like Craig, it's my last time for you to have to put up with me. I would not be leaving this job if it weren't for health reasons, but I have been advised by my physician that I need to leave, and I can no longer do the department that I love in this community the justice that it deserves. It is a fine department made up of wonderful human beings who work every day tirelessly to make a difference in this community. Often our success is measured by the lack of things that you can observe. We're successful because we don't have measles. We're successful because we don't have restaurant outbreaks. We're successful because children are safe in childcare. I could go on, but I won't. It's not my work. It's the department's work. The people who work there who make the difference every day to make Anchorage a safe and wonderful community to live in. And I would stay there till my dying day if I could. The people are fabulous. The staff has done remarkable work. My colleagues are top-notch. I couldn't say anything bad about the department if I wanted to. I've been fortunate to work for 3 mayors. And I would say that's sometimes a hard road for directors, and I know as assemblymen that sometimes frustrates you, because our job is to be loyal to the administration that we serve, even if it varies from your opinion or even our own personal opinion. And if I were here, I would do that again until my dying day, because that, if any of you were mayor, that's what you would want to. And finally, I would just like to say I've been lucky to work for many municipal managers, but I also have to give the credit to George Vacalis. He is a fine municipal manager. He is a fine man. He is the backbone of support for directors in this city, and it would be hard to do our job without his continued commitment and interest and knowledge of all the work we do. And I just want to have one more moment of personal indulgence. My mom is here. We moved around a lot, and I came here when I was 12. And I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And my brother, the one right after me, would say, we might have had some challenges growing up, but we had the best mom ever. And I just wanted to acknowledge my mom for everything she's ever done for me. Because I wasn't an easy kid, and I'm not so easy as a grown-up either. But I'm lucky because she loves me every day. And my husband does too, but he's too shy to come down here, and I want to embarrass him. Thank you so much.
Mr. Starr.
Ms. Engel, you've demonstrated what a public servant really means, and tonight is the other example in that you rarely say the word I'm this, I'm that. You never say that, and I really commend that, because it is all about we. And I will say your service to those that don't get to see what you do down here every Tuesday or every other Tuesday with chumps like me giving you the static back and that, but you've never gave us a dishonest answer or misleading statements, and not to say that you would, but you could have, and you told us the way it was. And I really, it's a breath of fresh air to always get that from you. And so there was never a sense that I needed to dig any deeper. If you said it was, it was. And I really commend you for that, because that's a depth of knowledge and an understanding of your people, and you back them up every time you had the chance. And that is not easy. There was never a blame game with you on any of the topics that came before you. You stood behind them and you defended them. And that takes a tremendous amount of honor. So if I could stand up again and salute you, praise you, or be an example of what you offer to this community, I would do that again. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. You are a special breed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Mr. Honeman.
Ms. Engel, thanks again for all your years of service to this city and the state and public health. You know, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, I know I'm probably one of those, as Mr. Starr described, as chumps that probably came to you with several issues that we were trying to find and ferret out information. You were always there, soliciting, particularly most recently, fluoride. I know we're not done with that, and I'm going to do my best to try to get, a recommendation from the committee to this body rather soon, and hopefully before. I don't know when your last effective date is. I thought you said September, so I'm hoping we can hang in.
Today is my last effective day.
Okay, well then.
But I'll be cleaning my office out for the rest of the week.
There we go. But I will say that, in the area of our public health, I think Mr. Willard was describing AWU's responsibility to keeping good health in our community, and certainly, I eat out a lot. I'll self-profess. I know I've seen the municipal manager at a couple of restaurants we share some similar interest in. It's important, and it's important on daycare, and it's important on infectious disease control and bed bugs, and we could go on, but health department is a cornerstone of public safety. I view that as a very serious role. It's not just police and fire and red lights and sirens. So thank you for your dedication, and I think you are a good example of reminder that all of these jobs that we hold, including us on this assembly body, are the people's positions and not to any one party or one person or servant. You're serving everybody in the city. So I know you did your best, and I know you gave your best, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Diane, for your service, and I was truly honored that I was asked to read your resolution. It just meant a lot to me, and I just really enjoyed working with you. We really, really worked well together, and you always had allegiance to who you worked for, but you were also helpful to me personally and my constituents, and I really appreciate that, and I wish you well, and just take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trombley.
Ms. Engelhardt, I wanted to relive an experience I had with you. I had sent you an email about a question that was on the agenda, and you responded, and it was sufficient, and I didn't want to respond because it was a sufficient answer. And you called me 2 days later at like 8:30 at night, asking me if that was a sufficient answer. And I thought, that young lady's devoted to her job, man. Who's calling me at 8:30 at night? So you're going to be missed, and I really appreciate your follow-up. You were always very good with that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Diane, I can't go to Miss Singles. I'm sorry, but we go back a long ways. Even prior to my being on this august body, I chaired the Cemetery Commission for a long time. And a lot of people don't realize that's Diane's responsibility. She not only takes care of us when we're alive, she makes sure that we're in a well-maintained garden when we're deceased. And every representative that you've ever sent to our meetings have been phenomenal. You've always been there to provide the support that was necessary. You are, without doubt, truly going to be missed. Mr. Vacalis.
Thank you, sir. Diane, on behalf of the mayor, the staff, your fellow directors.
Thank you.
You were superb.
Thank you. No, nobody will harass you like I do, Jorge.
Well, I'll certainly enjoy our colorful conversations, and I'll certainly remember just how well thought of you are by so many folks in the community as well as in the administration. Your advice is always sought after. Your advice is very, very good, and you're unflappable. And we certainly will miss you, and we wish you the best on your health.
Thank you. Can I go now?
You are, but one closing comment, Diane. You know, we are going to miss you. We understand your health issues. You take care of yourself. We want you to be with us for a long, long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have before us item 9B2, resolution number 198, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly authorizing the Mountain View Community Council and Anchorage Community Land Trust to proceed with the development. Thank you. Mr. Starr?
Move to approve.
Second. Mr. Starr?
I guess, is it Mr. Weaver? They can probably best answer some questions and some clarification on what we're doing here. I guess the first question is, are we encumbering municipal funds to support the action here? I didn't see an economic impact or a statement of what the co-joined relationship is and the utilization of municipal resources. Do you anticipate a cost to that from the municipalities?
Well, not, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Starr, not at this point in time. This is a community-initiated endeavor. It's endorsed by a sponsor. It's similar to what the Fairview community has started a few years back and hasn't finished, but it needs assembly authorization to move forward. They have a VISTA volunteer that's worked with them as well, that's put together a pretty significant amount of information to get started with. We've met with them as a department. This basically allows them to get started and initiate it. So if the plan for Mountain View were to come forward in the future, it would be funded through the general operating fund or through a state grant. More likely, we've seen more and more state grants funding these district plans.
What about the relationship with ACDA? Now, historical perspective says that ACDA had a lot of oversight in the current development of the Mountain View area and some of that. Where does ACDA fit into this in terms of the reporting authority?
There's not. The ACDA would certainly be a component of that. They're just as any other participant in the plan. They would be a component of it. They're not the driving force.
Well, I guess what I'm wanting to make sure is I understand what it says in the title of this action, which is with support from the appropriate municipal agencies. So I'm not sure where that expectation is set. Is that just your department or, like I said, ACDA, or what do you anticipate that support
It would be the Community Development Department and any other supporting departments that could contribute to that effort.
Will they be successful with that design? Is that the history of these neighborhood plans as they come to us later? Are they started well and then we finish them up, or what's the expectation here so that we can make sure it is successful? That's the first thing. So how do you see it happening?
Fairview had a pretty significant plan. They had a professional planner that lived in the community that helped work on the plan. I believe it's lost momentum for whatever reason. There were some, final finishing components that they needed to put forth in their plan. I think the highway-to-highway issue, I think a lot of external things came up and basically stalled that for a period of time. But I would expect with the initiative and the desire by the people that we met with from Mountain View that this will be a successful endeavor.
The Anchorage Community Land Trust has some funding already, I guess, is that true? Is there money to get started here, or what do you anticipate?
You would need to discuss that with them, but I think they are contributing their resources and to this project to some degree.
Okay. Well, let us know if the department gets a request that you can't honor through your budget, and we'll see how that dialogue can shake out.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just urge approval.
Seeing no one else, any objections, unanimous approval? Seeing, hearing none, this item is approved unanimously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, other end. May I take a point of personal privilege and allow the two folks from ACLT who are here tonight to introduce themselves to you?
Community Land Trust.
One of them is the Vista volunteer that Mr. Weaver referenced.
Hello, my name is Stuart Bannon. I'm the Business Development and Real Estate Manager for ACLT, and we just thank you very much for approving our resolution. We're looking forward to getting going in Mountain View on this plan.
Hi, my name is Erin Hardy. I'm the AmeriCorps Vista volunteer that was mentioned before. I just came to Anchorage in January, and I'm very excited to be working on this project, and I assure you I'll do my best work. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Congratulations.
And if any of you ever run into Erin on the street, Vista Volunteers is like a vow of poverty, so buy her a latte or something.
We now have before us item 9D7, Assembly Memorandum Number 472, Amendment 1 for Utility Relocation Agreement. Yes. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve. And I'm not sure who can answer that. I asked the question, I got a kind of an answer, which was, if we do this specific relocation, does it preclude either of the two options for rerouting the creek on this parcel? And I got a drawing, but I just couldn't tell the answer. So if I get
I'll jump in, and if that's not adequate enough, we have people here that can answer it. The bottom line is that regardless of which option was selected, this has to be done.
Okay, so but it doesn't preclude either option either?
No.
Okay, that's all I needed, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there is no objection, we will let this show that it's passed unanimously. So let it be written. Mr. Kendall, this concludes our consent agenda. Mr. Kendall, would you come up front for a moment, please? we want to take this opportunity to welcome you aboard and congratulate you. I'm trying to remember, Intergovernmental Relations, what was the title on your door when I walked by the other day?
I'm sorry, I thought of something funny right then. Intergovernmental Affairs Director, and I look forward to working with all of you, getting capital projects gone, taken care of, funded for your districts, for your constituents. I've worked with a lot of you in the past and look forward to doing it again.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a brief break. I want to have everyone back at 6:30 so we can get this meeting continued. We'll take our dinner break. 11A, AM 57, Internal Audit Report 2012-07, Police and Fire Retiree Medical Trust 2-year review, Employee Relations. This has been before us. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just, based on my audit report earlier, I would encourage everybody to vote to accept this report and hold on to see the results of the ad hoc committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Yes.
Mr. Trombley is out of the room.
That motion passes 10 with 1 absent. Ms. Osiander, my apology.
Mr. Hall, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to combine the public hearings for 13A and 14A, since they're essentially the same item.
Any objection from the body?
Second.
Seeing, hearing none, we will combine 13A and 14A, and that is AO number 44, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 23.10.05 to clarify contractors. Thank you. This is now before us for public testimony. Anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all?
He said he did.
Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the Assembly, my name is Paul Michelson. I'm the owner of Michelson and Daughter Construction Company. Been a general contractor, home builder in this town for about 38 years. I'm representing here tonight the Anchorage Home Builders Association. It's a membership of approximately 280 members. We have worked with the city on this issue. We've tried to bring the municipality of Anchorage in line with state regulations and state ordinances. We are in favor of this proposal, this ordinance being placed before you tonight. We think that it will enhance the quality of the work completed by some handymen, not all. There is some very qualified handymen out there. And just as builders, there's some very qualified and some very not so qualified. We feel this will bring all the handymen into the contracting arena. It'll make it much fairer and equitable for the entire industry. As far as overheads and profits are discussed, general contractors usually do have a little bit more overhead, a little bit more insurance requirements. Right now, a handyman doesn't have to have it. In my understanding, does not have to have any insurance. There's no liability if a problem goes bad, and I can give you the example that I followed behind. There's no means for the unsuspecting homeowner to attach a method in which they can recoup damages performed or created by such handymen. I don't know if I want to belabor the entire issue, but the entire Home Builder Association, the building community, we're in favor of this ordinance, and I'll answer any questions you have for me at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Training.
Question, sir, which version? We've got two versions in front of us. One is $1,000 or $1,000. The other one is $5,000. Maybe, which one are you talking about?
Mr. Trainee, through the chair, we're in favor of the $5,000 limit, but if to get it passed, we'd have to agree to accept the $1,000, we would do that.
But you're comfortable with the 5,000 level?
The current would be 5. That's preferable.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Honeman.
I think that was my next question, Mr. Moxon, is based on your experience. So that version of the ordinance would put requirements to go to the permit center and be required to hold the same or similar certifications as a contractor, as a handyman, if it's a project over 5,000. Is that your understanding then?
Mr. Honeman, through the chair, that is correct. And what it would do is give, in my opinion, would give the city the opportunity to, if you want to call it watchdog, or know what's actually being built out there. The home builders did a little self-study about 2 years ago, and it was performed by Clay Porter, who's a well-known architect builder in this town, and he believes through his study that the municipality building safety department is losing between $85,000 and $125,000 a year on unlicensed work being completed in Anchorage.
Thank you.
Mr. Birch.
Good evening. Thanks for coming this evening. One of the questions, the estimate of financial cost of the city is zero, and it strikes me that this is going to layer on significant responsibilities on the city's part as far as policing and licensing and I mean, a big long list of additional contractors. Is that seen as kind of an impediment to this being successful? I mean, the fact that there is going to be more slow things down, if you will, in the city review process. Because what I've always heard is that there's not enough people to get the reviews done and get the work done right now.
Mr. Birch, through the chair, it's more of an opinion question you're asking me. I can't. I'd like to think I know how the city operates, but I can't answer that. But I think with the process that I'm quite familiar with at the MOA Building Safety Division, that they already have the inspectors in place. They have one inspector by name of, I don't know if names are allowed to be mentioned, but it's irrelevant who the person is, but his job duties is to go around and police and watch, and that's what he gets paid to do every day. As far as extra load on the inspectors, it would add a few more inspections, but the question that you just asked then would be the reason we're in favor of it. Why not have oversight on these inspections and have an additional pair of eyes look at work that's being completed? And I'm not talking about putting a doorknob on, but when you're erecting decks at a second story and you're erecting bathrooms and full basements, that's when there should be somebody looking at it.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, fellow members of the Assembly.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all?
Hi, my name's Cody Lee. I'm current president of the Anchorage Home Builders Association and also owner of Grayling Construction. Thank you for this opportunity. The original version, I want to thank the mayor and the building safety for bringing the original version at the $1,000 level. The Anchorage Home Builders is much more in support of the $1,000 level for a number of reasons. The $5,000 level the $1,000 level was discussed between building safety and the Anchorage Home Builders, and we came up after a lot of discussion at the $1,000 level. And I believe the $5,000 level would continue to confuse consumers on who is a licensed contractor and who is not. There's been a lot of confusion out there because of the state handyman licensing and the municipality licensing and who's a licensed contractor, who's a handyman. There's a lot of work that can be done at the $5,000 level, and it can be done at poor quality, and these folks don't have to have any insurance. There's no recourse for the homeowner or the future homeowner, And that's what a lot of people don't understand. When they hire a handyman and they let them be contractors in their home, they're also risking the future homeowners. As a contractor that primarily does remodeling, we open up a lot of walls that has unbelievable messes done in them. Everything from bad electrical to bad plumbing all the time, and a lot of it isn't done by the last homeowner. It was done by some handyman that was hired. This ordinance wasn't about stopping the small guy from working. The $1,000 level would let the true handyman work, straightening out a door, putting a doorknob on, doing real handyman stuff, replacing a deck board or something. But it doesn't give enough room for them to get into this gray area where they're actually a contractor and should have a contractor's license and liability. This state isn't very difficult to get a contractor's license in. It's one of the easier states to get it in. This is about enforcing licensing and permitting and giving the city the ability to do that. Right now, as I understand it, when an inspector, code enforcement person comes on the job and he asks somebody that's not a licensed contractor what their name is, they don't even have to give him their name. They can tell him to get lost. He has no recourse. He cannot look at anything if there isn't a clear violation of permitting there. He's done for the most part. He can't go any further. And I think it would be of a great thing for the public, for the building officials to be able to check some of this stuff, because there is so much shoddy work out there and being done, and primarily by these so-called handyman. That's why this group is pushing for a higher dollar amount, is for this, so they can continue doing contracting work under this handyman licensing. These guys run around with no responsibility. They don't pay, most likely don't pay taxes or anything else, and that's one of the reasons that we have came out against this, or for getting some sort of enforcement so the building officials can enforce our contractors' law.
Mr. Lee, I need you to conclude. We've run out of time.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Birch.
I just had a follow-up question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So what are the requirements as they exist under state law for instance in Eagle River, or areas out of the municipality outside of the building department jurisdiction? What sort of constraints or requirements and licensing assurance does a homeowner have? If
you're acting as a contractor, the state has its state contractor's licensing that you're supposed to have. The original handyman version, as my understanding, was brought forward for the small rural towns where there isn't enough business to sustain a contractor. And so it was to allow their neighbor who had contracting knowledge to work on their house and not have to fly somebody into that village. That was what this primarily was set up for. Now it's being used here in Anchorage, and in my opinion, and the home builder's opinion, being abused.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other questions. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all?
My name is Robert Burton. I own Burton Repair, and I have a handyman business. I'm a sole proprietor, and everything they've been saying just blows me away, because I got $1 million, $2 million worth of liability insurance. I pay my taxes, but all the things that they're wanting to add in there is going to push me out of business, because I don't compete. I don't want to do $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $65,000 jobs. One person is just too much. I want to stay small. I want to keep doing it the way I'm doing it. And I haven't had any problems with that. The inspectors come by, but I'm not doing the big jobs to do that. If they want the inspectors to let us pull a permit Have the muni say, okay, you can go pull a permit. It isn't that we have to have a license to pull the permit. Go down there, just like the homeowner, pull the permit. Because if we can pull a permit, the muni can come on there. But the muni can come into anybody's house, because they walked right into my personal house when we were doing some work. And the person that does it, his name is Barnhill. He drives around looking for jobs that people are doing without permits, and then reports them. And walked right into my house when you don't, and the policeman can't even walk into my house without a reason, an emergency. So it does happen, and they put a stop work order on because we were working on our house, on my own house. So things can be done, and if it's not meeting code, things can be done there. And then they watch for specialty license work being done that you don't, if you don't have the specialty license. Yes, we changed doorknobs, we fixed doors. But the big guys are now trying to push the little guys out of business that are doing, sure, there's a lot of handymen out there that aren't doing good work. There's a lot of contractors out there that aren't doing good work. Contractors could walk away with money just like handyman can. You're going to have more people doing by the sly or undercover work than you do that right now. If it's a policing situation, you're going to have to put more people on because they can't keep up with it now. So how are they going to be able to keep up with it if they're going to keep doing it without more licensing requirements? So that's the deal. It used to be $5,000 for the handyman license when I started 20 years ago. Then somebody came in and got it pushed up to $10,000. Now they're trying to push us down to $5,000 or $1,000. I go in and level a mobile home, $3,500. Does a contractor want to level a mobile home? No. And you got to skirt it when it's done. That's another $5,000. There's $8,500 minimum. So what are we going to do? Pull a permit? There's no permit required. I've gone through the muni and checked this out. So what's going to happen is more homeowners are going to be pulling permits for people to do work at their house. And they say that it's not legal to do that, but if the homeowner's helping, there's nothing they can do about it. So it's kind of a farce deal. I was always understood when I got my license, I had to have insurance. I started with $500,000. I went to $1 million. The first $250,000, then I went to $500,000, then I went to $1 million, and within a year. Let me see. I'm a little new at this. Give me a minute.
We're actually out of time, and I've got questions
Okay.
for you. Mr. Honeman.
Yeah, Mr. Burton, I know you're looking at something there, so finish your thought if you could on that. You had something on that you're reading there?
Oh, I got some notes I was writing down while the other guys
There's something
talked.
quick you can say? I do have a specific question. But you were saying earlier that when you first got into the business that it was $5,000 and above, you had to go to the building permit section and get permits. And
Well, we couldn't do any work above $5,000.
okay, now it's $10,000?
Now it's $10,000.
Okay, so do you support the ordinance that we have that says 5,000 versus the 1,000?
Well, I don't, because just like I just explained, if I'm leveling a mobile home, which you can't get people to touch mobile homes, you can't get licensed plumbers to go in, you can't get licensed electricians to go in, you can't get licensed contractors to go in, because mobile homes, people either don't have the money, they're a mess, nothing fits right, nothing square, and they don't want to fool with it. They only want the big money. And I've been doing this for 20 years, I know. And I have people call me, just today, 3 people from mobile homes called me, thank you for taking my call, thank you for coming over and fixing whatever they had to get fixed.
So I'm trying to drive this down. If you're saying the state requires a $10,000 or less,
yes.
Are you saying if the city had a similar ordinance at $10,000 or more that you would be in support of that, if the city ordinance mirrored the state law?
Well, I'm happy to pull a permit as long as the muni will allow me to go down there and do it. And any work that I do, if they say, Robert, you need a permit to level that trailer. No problem, I'll go down there.
And that you couldn't perform a job as a handyman anything more than $10,000?
I don't want to do it. But what's going to happen is somebody's going to go in and level the trailer, $3,500. Then they're going to go in and 2 days later, a week later, come back and skirt it for $49.95 to get under your $5,000 limit. And even though you know that's what I'm going to do, they're going to put a time barrier in between and then continue working and do it anyway. It's still going to happen. Or the homeowner has to go down and get a permit. But right now there's no permit required for leveling. And, that's the biggest thing. The homeowner is the one that should say, show me your insurance. They ask me about bonding. I say, I can get you bonding, but the bonding is going to cost $300 job that I'm doing is going to cost you more to go after my bond than when you're going to charge that I'm going to charge you for a $300 job. To go to court, get an attorney, go after a bond.
Mr. Birch.
I just want to thank you for your testimony this evening, and I guess I'm still from a state perspective. Then you have a state license.
Yes, I have the state handyman license.
Yeah, okay, and that's basically the threshold, and that permits you to operate anywhere in the state as well, right? In addition,
as far as I know.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Ms. Osiander.
I just wanted to clarify that this provision wouldn't stop you from doing work to demolish a mobile home. It would just say that if you're going to do work that's over a certain value, you need to go get a city license. That's all it says.
A city license for what?
Well, if you look at the ordinance and the
I just
copy
got
from-
it. It was never sent to me or anything.
Okay, if you look at the ordinance and it's in the back, it's listed there the specific types of jobs. So if you bid a job in one of those categories and it's over either 1,000 or 5,000, whatever we decide, then you'd have to get a license to do that kind of work. But it wouldn't stop you from doing the work.
Yes, but how many licenses do I need? And being a sole proprietor, could I support all these licenses and all the different insurances that go along with the license and still be able to work without having to raise my rates 2 or 3 times?
Okay, my understanding is...
And then the big guys can absorb different expenses and then
okay, I hear you.
and
My
justify
understanding
it.
is it's one license. Sharon, is that right? Or George?
No, there's many licenses.
Just a minute, sir. A handyman license. You don't have to have a handyman license in plaster, a handyman's license in masonry.
We don't. Okay, we don't. There's no. Even the state doesn't have a handyman license. They have an exemption for people in the handyman business.
Okay.
What would happen here, and we are mirroring the state statute, is you have up to 3 specialty licenses, and then if you're doing more than that, you would want to get a general contractor's license, which would allow you to do the other items.
Okay. Thank you.
There are no other questions. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us. Ms. Osiander.
Mr. Hall, I'd like to move 14A, and then my intent would be to postpone the 13A indefinitely after we deal with 14A.
Second.
Okay. We now have 14A before us.
I prepared this directly as a result of the discussion we had at the work session. The changes here are, 1, the dollar threshold, which we've already discussed. 2, the section, we had a lot of discussion about lawn mowing and lawn maintenance and at the work session, and so I exempted that from the requirement. But other than that, it's pretty similar. I guess I thought that the wish was to go with 1,000 from the Home Builders Association, but I was a little uncomfortable with that. And so because of the title, I felt it was necessary to introduce another ordinance to give us some flexibility. I was actually, because of the work session, thinking about even going down to 2,500 because Ms. Walsh had said that that would mirror the state. But now, after the testimony, in support of the 5,000 and the fact that historically there was 5,000, I think I'm going to stick with that right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Osiander. Mr. Starr.
Well, I spoke with Mr. Burton at length over the course of the month or so, and I sort of did my homework on where it comes from, and I was struck by a couple things. Is we're doing things that I'll call sort of the double whammy. Mr. Burton started to illustrate it, but if you look at what we're actually trying to do here, we're doing a double whammy, not only to the industry and the handyman associates, but we're also doing it to the public. And sort of the doubleness of it is the licensure requirement does in fact just drive up overhead. It's sort of this level playing field that the home builders would want to see forced upon this industry that is truly mom and pop. And the overhead impact initially is that this isn't cheap. These bonds and insurances, one at a time for three specialty permits. If he crawls under there and sees the plumbing leaking, he's now a plumber. then the leveling, if it requires a masonry skirt to continue to block that up, then he's a specialty contractor in masonry, and you can see how quickly it can get out of hand. We're also going to put the whole system into a bureaucratic, sort of a bureaucratic nightmare, not only for the industry here, but I think the general user, the general person that calls up and says, hey, I need my house fixed for this reason, or I want a deck built. And that's going to require these folks that would normally say, I can start tomorrow. They can't say that now. They're going to go down to our planning office and they're going to have to apply. Hopefully that's a quick permitting requirement, but usually that's going to be a backup requirement for an engineer to draw up a sonotube support and a deck that's rotted. There's going to be the electrical oversight because the GFI breaker that's been in existence for 25 years doesn't meet specifications. And we're going to put that into a nightmarish scenario through both of these actions. The regulatory environment that sends these folks to a specialty contractor's license or a general contractor's license, and I've pulled a general contractor license before, and it is not cheap. You better have a very well-spoken project to do it. My experience is my phones light up almost more from contractors that are licensed contractors that have had their plans permitted and have had plan review. The phone calls I get are not that homeowner that said, hey, my deck was built 2 years ago, I'm just trying to sell my house and it's not a compliance. I take very few of those calls. In fact, I can't remember them. I take more calls from the fact that, hey, the guy put a French drain in there, or the power's now flickering in my neighborhood because that guy connected to it, or that subdivision was developed and we flooded the street downhill. I get far more calls and interceding in those situations than I do. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to say that this is overreach, and I'd like to make sure that the rest of the Assembly understands just how far we're going with this, and it's regulatory, not of its time. Thank you.
Mr. Horniman.
Well, I've got a story that's almost reverse of that, and I shared that, I think, last meeting or right before or after with, I believe, Mr. Starr. And I didn't have the name of the company at the time, but I don't remember the gentleman's name, but the renovation company. I got his picture of his truck, and not a block over from my own residence, and I start getting calls from neighbors and friends of neighbors. They were telling me about this $80,000 job this guy was lining up, and it was a nightmare. He took $20,000, this lady's money, was supposed to do her kitchen and deck and a greenhouse in the backyard. He did like a $2,000 job in the backyard with the deck, with the greenhouse, disappeared for almost a month. This lady's sitting there with the boxes waiting for him to show back up. And yeah, you can say caveat emptor, the lady didn't do her homework and didn't get her paperwork straight, and she was a widower. She usually left her husband counterpart doing most of that kind of work. But, you know, that's not regulated enough in my opinion. And frankly, this $5,000 limit seems reasonable. I think that we need to get a little bit more effort on, I don't know what kind of, I'm a little concerned, like Mr. Burt said, what kind of cost is it going to be on the building department or our inspectors to go out and chase all this work down that people like Mr. Burton would do if it goes beyond the $5,000 mark. I can't believe that it would be nothing. I just can't believe that. But who pays for that? I mean, usually the permit, if it's a permitted job. But it's $5,000 or more, they must have a license. That's all it says. It didn't say that they must. And so, Ms. Walsh, am I wrong with this? They just have to have a license if they do an aggregate of $5,000 worth of work. Specialty license.
There's a couple of different facets of the permitting process. There's permits. We have requirements for permits, and there's several exemptions for work that doesn't need a permit.
Right.
And there's a monetary amount of $5,000 put on that. For non-structural work under $5,000, a permit is generally not required. But, however, we do expect the people who are doing that work, whether or not they need a permit, to have a license for the type of work they're doing. A good example, and some work, for example, siding, if you had a siding contractor come and replace all the siding on your house, that would certainly be more than $5,000, but siding is specifically exempted as needing a permit. However, you would want a licensed siding contractor to be putting the siding on your house. So there's kind of two different tracks going here, but that's the context.
Well, to that comment, there are no siding contractors listed as a specialty contractor. I don't know where they'd fall under, whether it be framing or.
Actually, I believe
So
would
I
be
guess what
the,
I'm saying is that you're absolutely right. If it's a $7,000 job, can this handyman, Mr. Burton, put the siding up for somebody for $7,000 without having to have a specialty license? Could he then just be licensed under the municipality as a handyman with the state license that he currently holds and perform that job?
I believe actually that would be these mirror the same licenses that the state requires. Siding would be involved in one of them, and I'm sorry at this minute I'm not seeing what I'm looking for here. But for example, it would be rough carpentry, fall under rough carpentry in the state's definitions. Okay, thank you.
So
go ahead.
So I guess my question to you then is, Mr. Burton was a perfect example. He's a handyman licensed by the state. If he took a job to side someone's house for $7,000, would this require him to have a rough carpentry specialty certification, or could he perform the work provided that he has a contractor's license with the municipality as a handyman, based on this provisional ordinance?
Okay, keep in mind there won't be a license called a handyman license. What this ordinance is doing, and similar to the state, it's an exception for certain work that's under the threshold. So if you're, and it's typically termed handyman work because that's the way that these companies normally market themselves. But it's right now we actually have no threshold. Right now, if we really wanted to get down to the brass tacks of it, we could go right now and enforce and ask people where their licenses are, because there's no threshold. But also our code is not as clear on what licenses are for which, and so that's why we're marrying it up to the state to clarify that and clarify the expectation that if you're doing work of a certain nature, you're expected to have a license, whether or not that work requires a permit.
And I have to, maybe to my colleagues as well, I probably missed this, but I admit, I believe that we were going to enact a license under the code of handyman license under the municipality, that a person may not operate in this municipality if that dollar amount went over $5,000 aggregate without such license. So I apologize to my colleagues for understanding.
Mr. Trombley.
Here's how I see it: is that you have a group of home builders or general construction that says, "Hey, we're operating under a different set of rules than what the handyman are operating under. I have to pull particular permits. I have to have particular licenses. I have to have all these regulations which government turns around and says I have to have these things in order to operate." So what they feel is that they don't have a level playing field. And so what we're doing is that we're going to add a layer of government to create a level playing field. Well, frankly, I see it in reverse. Instead of adding a layer of government, why don't we remove some from general construction, residential, in order to help level the playing field? I just don't see how adding another layer of government is going to solve any problem. It's going to make it more expensive for individuals like this. It's going to make it more difficult for him to do his job, and it may very well put him out of business. And frankly, I don't see how I have the authority to turn around and put somebody out of business.
Mr. Flynn.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's kind of fun to be stuck between the competing views of our Eagle River delegation and have my neighbor carrying the bill in question here. I'm really struggling with this one. I hear what you guys are saying in the home building community about, hey, we got to carry all these licenses and insurance and so on and so forth. But I have to believe you carry those anyway, just at least the insurances, given the risk of the business that you're in. And I really feel for what Mr. Burton said about how this would basically force him to become a general contractor and accept the additional overhead costs. And, so I'm honestly still undecided about this. I thought I knew I was going to vote when I walked in here tonight, but I'm really, really going to keep thinking while I'm listening to everybody, I guess.
We've got some others in the queue, so you have time to figure it out, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Trainee.
To the administration, do you have the capability, if we go forward with this ordinance, to issue all these contractor licenses? Do you have the capacity right now to do it?
Yes, we do. We do have the automated contractor license module of Hanson is up and running. It's been working fine, which has been nice. And we would operate just as we have a person dedicated to that, and we do have the capability to do it.
What's the time delay? Because they're always complaining that time is money. What time are we talking about?
A license is generally a person can come in and get a license, walk in and get it and walk out. The time delay you normally hear about is for plan review or permit issuance, and that does take time because plans have to be reviewed.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Honeman for reading and getting it, because this is really what we're doing to these folks is we're telling them to specialize, and we're adding a layer of bureaucracy if they don't buy the general contractor's permit. A guy gets asked to do some drainage repair outside of a home, which requires a retaining wall, some backup for masonry, and dig a bunch of work out there to control drainage in his backyard. He can comply. He can go there and say, oh, I'm an excavator right now. I need to bring in that small rented backhoe and clear that dirt and then put in that French drain. Then it's back it up with the retaining wall fence or the keystone block. Then he's a masonry, and then throw up any of the other stuff that he's asked to do by that homeowner. You can't get a Trex deck in this town of any size for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 installed. You can't have that guy that's solely an excavator come in there and build a fence. And this is the whole point. I think it's our community saying loud and clear that they would like that flexibility. Would the homeowners group want to increase the overhead of these individual users, and would folks in the permitting department like to have the control to go over there and do that? Probably yes, but I haven't seen the case made strong enough yet. I haven't heard the community in an uproar. And yeah, there are those rare cases, Mr. Honeman, but I don't think that this fixes that. I would ask the question, but I'm not going to, is if you have all of that occur, how does this fix that? It really doesn't. That person can come there, represent themselves as a contractor. They can even put it on their truck, licensed, bonded, and insured, and they're not. So that's what I think, and I don't think this regulatory is that. A handyman permit or a handyman license that's got effective controls and is manageable by this group of small mom and pops, I'd entertain. But surely this is far too reaching. Thank you,
Mr. Birch.
I guess just had a follow-up. We had testimony about the leveling a trailer as an example, and I guess through the chair and to the administration, what of these licenses would be required in that case?
Mr. Birch, my understanding is, listening to the description of the work, is that would be maintenance work, and that wasn't something that would require a license or a permit, for that matter.
Okay.
If it's strictly leveling a trailer. The other thing to point out, to clarify, that the reason for having, what happens when you have the ordinance asks for we expect now a municipal and a state contractor's license for what they're doing. The municipal license is simply that. It's a license that we issue with a licensing fee. The state license carries two requirements. If you're doing work over $2,500, you carry liability insurance. If you're doing work over $10,000, then they ask for the actual specialty licenses. So, or the general contractor's license. I'm sorry, $10,000, the bonding kicks in. So, over $2,500, you need to have insurance, general liability insurance, that the homeowner can, if a person says, say a painting contractor has overspray, sprays paint on a neighbor's car, that insurance can be tapped to take care of the repairs. At $10,000, it's the bond that they file with the state. So that's the real meat of this.
Mr. Chair, if I might continue then. So it's my understanding that already existing in state law are those aforementioned protections for bonding and licensing under state?
Correct. And what this ordinance does is clarifies that the municipality expects you to have a state license. to do certain kinds of work, in addition to the municipal license.
It almost seems redundant if we have a state requirement for same. And I guess I'm looking at, I had a guy pull up my driveway with a big Hummer and wanted to sell me a seal coat job, you know. So, I mean, I think there's the door-to-door types that are doing, selling, new siding, I mean, you get a flyer in your front door that says you need new siding, which I guess you can take as a hint. But I think the unscrupulous contractors are certainly out there, licensed or not. But I think I guess the larger concern I have is just the chilling effect that this would have on the entrepreneur and the person that is following all the rules, getting the state licenses, and their work is basically bonded and insured if they're following state law. So.
Again, we're not asking for additional bonding or insurance, just to show that you have the state bonding and the state bonding and insurance. So you have the state license.
Okay, thank you. I believe I'll be a no vote on this. I'm concerned about the redundancy. I think we've got ample evidence of just in our own municipality where our building division doesn't really extend, where the public is ably and capably protected by state law under both insurance and bonding, as we've discussed here earlier. So, thank you.
Ms. Osiander.
I wasn't going to speak again, but I need to share with you why I'm going to vote for the 14A. This summer in Birchwood, we had a guy on a truck with a tar pot in the back come door to door and offer to do strip paving on our driveways. And you don't get a lot of that in Birchwood, really. We have a lot of dirt driveways. So people were actually taking him up on it. He gave a pretty good price. And just in a 4-block place, 5 of the driveways took advantage of it. And within 2 or 3 weeks, people started complaining like crazy because it would peel off the side and they couldn't get a hold of the guy. And he had given the flyers everywhere down. And it turned out that one neighbor really investigated, and he had come up just for the summer to try to make some quick money and then was out. Like everything, there's some right on both sides of an issue here, but I think giving some additional protection isn't a bad thing. And it seems to me, I was uncomfortable with the 1,000, but I think if you get up to 5,000 on a job, it's more reasonable. A licensure requirement isn't tremendously prohibitive. The administration says they can handle it. This has been a complaint from the home builders for at least 8 years, because 10 years, I know, that Coffee was working on it. You guys asked me to work on it a long time ago, and I kind of threw up my hands. So I know this is a big issue for you. I think that it is a significant issue, and I'm going to urge support for 14A.
See no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That motion fails 6-5.
Mr. Chairman, at this point then the question is, do we want to deal with 13A? I was going to move that 13A be postponed indefinitely.
I'll make that motion.
All right.
Okay, we've got Mr. Starr. Oh, okay. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Yes.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. We now have before us item 14B, AO number 83, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to select and approve an adjacent property for the Chugach Fire Station replacement project.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Hi, my name is Craig Lance, and I'm with the Board of Supervisors for the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department. And we also have other members of the Board of Supervisors and also a member of the Chugiak Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department. We're here in support of this ordinance, and we would like to thank Debbie Osiander and George Bakalis and the Maintenance and Operations Department for helping us with this. Basically, the Bill Lowe Fire Station in Eagle River, which is operated by the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department, had some structural damage as a result of the snowfall from last winter. And as a result, it couldn't be used as a fire station anymore. And the volunteer fire department had to reallocate its resources around. They're doing their job, but it's making it a lot more difficult. And so we did get a state grant, and we are going forward with a construction of a new fire station. And with this ordinance, it'll speed that up, and hopefully we'll be able to get into a new fire station by the summer of 2014. So, thank you.
It's a long ways up there. We've taken a great deal of care.
If you please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ronnie Sullivan. I'm with the Board of Supervisors for the Chugiak Fire Service area. We've gone to a lot of work on site selection for this building. The current lot, or the original Bill Lowe Station lot at Station 35, was a makeshift fire station 6-7 years ago. And actually the lot is too narrow for the size of the trucks that pull out, for the orientation of the building, and the lot itself is not wide enough for us to change the orientation of the station. And that is what sort of led us into this whole need for a new site. It's a key station. That's a big service area. We're covering our bases very well, but I have to tell you, this puts a tremendous strain on the system that exists. And we would really like to move along as quickly and as thoughtfully as we can. But we've taken a really good look at this, and we're hoping for your help.
And I'm Peter Mulcahy, also on the Board of Supervisors. I just want to highlight what Craig and Ronnie have already said, that when we found out that the existing station was not financially viable to be repaired and we needed to vacate, we started looking at properties immediately, and we did an extensive search looking at all different kinds of options, leases, purchases, as Ronnie talked about, staying in the same location. Fortunately, with Debbie and Mr. Vaquelos over here, we found an HLB property right next door that is adequate. It's going to work. It's going to fulfill our needs and can be expedited. So with a yes vote tonight, we can get moving. We have the RFPs ready. Again, significant appreciation to the city manager for having all these people line up. We're ready to go. We just need your support. Thank you.
There are no questions. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue. Okay, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. There's no discussion in the documentation about what compensation HLB will receive for this lot. Is there a plan for that? Or any discussion on that point?
Someone from administration have an answer?
The property of HLB is for a public purpose. This serves the need of a public purpose. This has gone through the process, and quite frankly, this is probably the best use of that property, especially where it's right next to where the existing building is, and it can be augmented. They can use both properties. The existing property, I would agree, as will all of the staff after looking at it, it's just not a good location. This location that we're offering up is, and again, remember, one of the missions of HLB is for public purpose, and a fire station is in great need in that location because that is the right location to be able to adequately serve that service area.
I understand that, Mr. Michaelis, and I appreciate the information, but if this were an AFD, Anchorage Fire Department fire station, that seems a slightly different situation than if it's going to the service area fire department is. And so is the property then retained by the city if for some reason the fire service area doesn't to exist?
The city owns the property. The city actually will own the facility itself.
Okay, so we'll retain ownership. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
No, I think Patrick got the summary at the end there. It's not owned by anybody else. I did just want to take this time to commend Ms. Osiander and Mr. Michaelis for sort of jumping on it. Also like to just show you how it works there with the Board of Supervisors. That are the best folks to make the decision. So one of the nuances, as I was on Planning and Zoning, and Pete's there, it's oftentimes a bureaucratic requirement to go through Planning and Zoning and have that hearing of best site selection, and that's appropriate for schools and some of the more controversial requirements, but this one here just effectively bypasses that step and puts the leadership and the decision-making into those folks that know it best, and an affirmation by us that it's appropriate. But Ms. Osiander did more than just the facilitation site selection, but she brought it to the issue. If you remember, we modified the legislative plan, and then she lobbied hard down in Juneau, so truly a good representation of what we all should try to do from time to time, but Debbie is a hero on this one, so thank you.
It's a partnership, Mr. Starr. You and I together.
Mr. Training.
Debbie, I was supporting you on this. It reminds me of Station 4. When they took that station down and trying to figure out where else they could put it, it ended up being the best place to put it was in the same location. We just bought the trailer court and expanded it. So sometimes where it's at now is the best place to keep it. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Osiander.
No, I just wanted to, Bill has been to many a Chugiak Volunteer Fire Department meeting, so he's being a little bit disingenuous here.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14C, AO number 180, a resolution confirming the 2012 assessment roll.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is now before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Good evening. My name is Chris Schutte. I'm the Executive Director for Anchorage Downtown Partnership, here to testify tonight on behalf of passage of this ordinance. I emailed to each of you. We like to prepare annual reports on the status of the Downtown Improvement District for each of you to help keep track of the activities and what we see and what we do in downtown so that each of you remains better informed. I won't go over a lot of it because I know that nobody likes hearing stuff repeated that they've already looked at or read. But I hope that as you look at a lot of the diagrams that we provided for you and a lot of the statistics that we've shown, there is a lot of stuff happening in downtown. It was a very active and busy 2011. And I like to think that my team that I'm fortunate to have really rose to the challenge, both of the snowfall, which we're all familiar with, which took up a significant chunk of resources, as well as a lot of the changes in the social problems that downtown deals with. We've seen record numbers of chronic public inebriates and the other issues that we deal with on a daily basis. That being said, if any of you have any questions about that report or about the Downtown Improvement District, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Mr. Training.
Thank you, sir, for being here. It's a lot cleaner process than years past. Not got any complaints into us, so thank you very much. It's working well.
Thank you.
Mr. Horniman.
Mr. Schutte, I know I talked to you earlier today, and we'll probably hear from Mr. Pino. It's an issue last year, I remember a couple of business owners' properties coming down and concerns that they weren't going to get what they thought was their money's worth, so to speak. Have you heard such complaints? Have you addressed any of those concerns? Can you give me a highlight, just a highlight of what you think is probably a success story, somebody you turned around and convinced that they get what their money?
Sure. Through the chair, there were a number of property owners who petitioned against the formation or the expansion of the district in 2010. Some of whom were in the infamous western end of the district. There are a number of those who only 2 years ago petitioned against it that are actually strong advocates of the improvement district. The Richmond and Quinn building is the first one that comes to mind, directly next door to the Carr-Gottstein building on K Street. That is primarily office space, attorneys and whatnot. They were opposed to the creation of the district. However, over the past year, their maintenance building supervisor has come to love and rely on us, and that is a success story that we like to talk about as far as people that were opposed but have then been turned around.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Starr.
It gets a little gross here, folks, but the defecation and the peeing and all the other stuff that we got those, and I still get them every now and then where somebody will wake up in the doorway and they're covered and their business has been, what's the strategy on that one, and then also the safety and security at bar closing time? Have you actively engaged that, and can you tell us how the partnership's engaging those conversations?
Sure. Through the chair, to answer your first question, it is a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. One of the things that we've been able to do is work with the property owners themselves to help identify those areas that are more attractive than others, to do that kind of thing, and figure out ways to mitigate that. We've had some successes with people reconfiguring entryways, et cetera, that has really helped. Also related to that, and kind of related to your second question, is that my crews start at 5 a.m. every day. And one of the first things we do out of the gate at 5 a.m. every day is what we call bar patrol. And so we're patrolling the downtown bars first and foremost in the morning with our power wash equipment, so that we can attack sort of some of the messes that can be left behind at the bars right out of the gate, because those typically were the loudest calls and complaints were the neighbors, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning when their employees show up and there's still stuff there. So we're actively engaged in power washing as much as we can, and working with the bars to try and get them to invest a little bit more of their own attention and resources into their block. One quick success story I want to share is the new ownership of the Avenue Bar, which used to be a hot spot for us as far as cleanups. The new owners of that bar have taken a very proactive approach to bar closing cleanup. And so the cigarette butts, the litter, the broken glass, the other stuff that comes with bar closing at that location has really, really dried up. And it's been a good success story. Related to the second question, we are not on duty that late. Our security patrols end their shifts at 10 p.m. at night. Having witnessed bar closing myself, I don't know that I want to put them in the middle of that. It's a huge liability that APD is better trained and equipped to deal with. That being said, we represent the people who unfortunately can bear the brunt of the cost of that behavior, which is the neighboring business and property owners. And I can tell you that it's beginning to come to a head, that a lot of the downtown property owners are concerned about the value of their investment because they're replacing windows, they're replacing doors and covering up graffiti. And it's a direct result in many instances of the activities after bar close. So we have started working with, we have a long relationship with CHAR and the members of the downtown licensees. We have a great relationship with APD. We're trying to work with both parties and the property owners to try and address these issues, get everybody at the table for buy-in, figure out what we can do to help contain this problem before it gets any worse.
And I guess through that answer, that there is sort of the expectation of your membership that that's some of what they want you to engage in and help solve that problem too. Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, it is the property owners themselves coming to us and saying, hey, I went to my building. They may not be in the building, but I went to my building today to check on a tenant, and oh my gosh, I didn't realize how trashed it can get. So they're getting concerned.
Great. Thank you very much for coming down.
Mr. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here, Chris, and thanks for sending all that information prior. The Assembly received the letter dated August 1st, which I'm sure, just like I just saw today, everybody else just saw today, from Senator Wielechowski, addressing a concern of one of his constituents who owns an apartment downtown. Could you respond to his concern?
Absolutely, through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The concerns, which you will hear about once I am done, is the issue of property owners who own a residential unit in downtown but do not reside in it. The assessment district classifies those individuals as business because they own an asset that they are then leasing, and so they have to pay the assessment. And the concern of Senator Wielechowski's constituent was that his feeling is that it's relatively unfair because the services provided by the district really seem to be targeted at the more commercial tenants, the more true business tenants, and not so much people who own a rental property and then rent it out. The response that we shared with the constituent as well as with Senator Wielechowski is to really illustrate the long-term area-wide benefits of the improvement district to everybody, not just to the commercial properties, but also to the tenants and hopefully eventually residents of downtown, and really stress the point that our improvement district and our organization is founded on the belief that the property values of areas like downtown can be influenced by the cleanliness, the safetiness, and the vitality of the area. And our organization is dedicated to improving that for downtown. And therefore, the property values associated with that will continue to rise as long as we're able to rise to the challenges. And that was the rationale behind why residential units that are not owner-occupied should be included in the assessment.
Thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you.
You said that if it's not owner-occupied, it's rented out, then in some way it's classified as a business. How is that? How do you guys see that when you don't necessarily need a business license in order to have a rental unit? Is there any sort of legal challenge with that at all?
Through the chair, that's probably a question that's better answered by legal. The requirement to have a business license isn't the qualifying characteristic for the assessment district. It's really if you are living in your unit and your name's on the door, then you are able to exempt yourself from paying that special assessment, as well as apply for the residential property exemption, et cetera. As soon as you own a building or own a unit and begin renting it out, whether or not you have a business license, you are engaged in a business transaction.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Flynn said
I think Marty can probably help answer the question, because I think I know the answer, but I'll let him give it. If you don't mind, Mr. McGee, would you address Mr. Trombley's question as to why we do owner-occupied exemptions but not non-owner-occupied?
Through the chair, I can respond to that. Enabling ordinance says owner-occupied residential property. We're using similar criteria that we use in the residential exemption. In general, these criteria require exclusive use for the exempt purpose. So anytime somebody rents out a piece of property, it is no longer regarded as owner-occupied residential property. The distinction about it being a business or not is really not the important part. It's that it's not exclusively used by the resident, by the owner.
I understand it. I was just confused on the business aspect of it, but thank you for the clarification, Chris.
Thanks, Marty.
There are no one else in the queue. Anyone else to testify?
Thank you.
Anyone at all?
Good evening. I'm Raymond Pino. Mr. Schutte just made reference to my situation. My wife and I have a small one-bedroom apartment in the building complex located on 6th and L Street. And we were, for 15 years, not included in that special assessment district because there were too many protests, there have been enough protests over the last 15 years to keep us from being on that assessment roll. To get on the assessment roll results in having an assessment. There's strange language. It's not a tax. And it's not a tariff. It's a levy. So we're not paying any taxes on our small two-bedroom apartment. We have been levied because we were included last year under provisions in the 2010 meeting. We were included in that. I don't know how we came to be included because for 15 years we were not included, and that was the first year that we have been included. And we were assessed, I think, $210 or something like that for having a business, for renting our two-bedroom apartment. And there are 50 of us. There are 50 apartments, and so we think it's unfair. First of all, because during the course of the year, during 2011 and during 2012, we have not received any services that are tangible, substantial, make any sense. And the levy seems, first of all, unreasonable, because we are not a downtown business. We did not ask to be in that when the businessmen were consulted downtown. Something like, I think Mr. Schutte mentioned something like a high percentage, maybe 60% of the rest of the downtown district businessmen said we want to be included. 40%, whatever the other figures, did not want to be included. In my apartment building, we had no say in that at all. It was just included in the 2010 Assembly meeting. And that someone persuaded the Assembly to expand, I think the language is, to include the assessment. Anyhow, it's to include the that one building. I think that's the only building, that's the only piece of property that came under the 210
Okay, I need you to conclude your testimony. We have some questions for you.
Yes.
Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Pino, I do. And I remember pretty clearly when the expansion was here, was about, if you will, underway. And if I'm not mistaken, and we can clarify that with Mr. Schutte, but my understanding is that everybody in that district, including the folks under the potential expansion, was given notice. Do you remember getting notice in 2010 for the expansion?
No, I did not receive a notice in 2010. I received a notice last year for the first time in a form similar to the one that went out this year for the hearing, also describing our property and assessing right away the levy of assessing right away. So that's the first time we ever heard about that. And the history, I reconstructed the history of it, and I know that that this is the first time in 2010 at that meeting. That's the first time that our apartment was included.
So 2011, last year you paid it in your taxes, the special
Last
levy.
year, I paid the taxes, I paid the levy.
And this is just the renewal, if you will, of the assessment that we have to approve.
And this notice is a renewal, and it also lists what the assessment will be for the next year if the Assembly approves it.
Okay.
I understand that that the purpose of this meeting is to see if there are any inequities, or let's see, the language is, I'm sure you're familiar with it, it's your agenda, inequities or errors or inequalities.
Anything else, Mr. Honeman?
That's it. I just, and you're saying that the assessment on your particular property was about $200 or more, a little over $200 for the year?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions. Thank you. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Birch, were you in the queue?
I am now.
Okay,
Mr.
Birch?
I was, as I recall this, the vote in 2010, I was a no vote. I had been approached by some folks in Peterson Towers, as I recall. And just for the illumination of those that aren't dialed into this, and I can't remember 100%, but I think it's a weighted vote. I was just going to maybe check and confirm with Mr. McGee, but I think it's a weighted vote, is it not? It's not one person per property. I think isn't it a weighted vote by the value of the property? So if you have a...
I'm sure Mr. Schutte can answer that for you.
He's nodding yes.
Okay, so it is a weighted vote for the benefit of the folks testifying, and I think we're in this for 10 years, as I recall. I think it gets re-upped every 10 years by the Assembly. If I is that right? And I apologize, Mr. Marty.
Okay. Mr. Honeman? Oh, Mr. Schutte?
Let me, sorry, I didn't want to shout across the room.
Maybe for the benefit of the...
Right. So the district does have a 10-year lifespan. It can only be renewed by a new petition of the property owners to continue. Otherwise, it will dissolve. Alternatively, if it doesn't live up to their expectations, the property owners have the right at any time to petition to dissolve. But again, the same bar is set for dissolution that there is for creation. So 50% plus one of the total value assessed value would have to vote to dissolve it.
So if you have $100,000 or $200,000 residential property, you're going to be outvoted by somebody that's got $1 million property by 5-1 then, or
yeah, whatever the actual math was, but yes,
it's the valuation. Okay,
yeah, it's the valuation.
Yeah, that's kind of a unique aspect of this that escapes some folks. So, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Honeman? While you're here, Mr. Schutte, can you address real quick, like if you know, Mr. Pino said he didn't recall getting a notice. Do you remember if we had any that were non-delivered or returned? Can you say with certainty that Mr. Pino might have received or did not receive?
Through the chair, I can assert that it didn't come back. I cannot definitively say whether he received it or not, but any mail that was undeliverable, any addresses that were bad, et cetera, those all came back. Every effort was made between us and the Muni to find the correct addresses and get them in their hands. I remember specifically, though, for this individual's property, it just never came back. But I think it's worth pointing out that individuals who did not submit a petition either way in the tallying process were counted as a no vote. So even if you didn't act on the petitions when they were circulating in 2010, you were still represented as a no vote.
Okay. And then next, I think I asked you this earlier, and I'm not sure if Mr. McGee or someone from the city can say, or Mr. Schutte, how many properties in that district are actually residential that are not owner occupied, and roughly what would that represent percentage-wise? Does anybody know?
I'd have to get back to you with that answer.
I'd appreciate
I don't have
that.
it total,
I'd appreciate
but I'll do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn.
Chris, one thing before you go, just remind everyone for the body, what was the percentage vote in favor, returned, just negative and then no return whatsoever 2 years ago? I remember roughly. It's like,
I don't remember the specifics on the no returns. The overall tally of petitioners was 62.5, I believe, in favor, 61.5, something like that.
I think I recall that the no's and the no returns were roughly equal.
Actually, the no's, yeah, they were about 20 points apiece, roughly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schutte.
Mr. Trini.
Well, I actually have a couple comments I'd like to make, Mr. Chairman. if you
Oh,
don't
yes,
mind.
please.
But Chris can sit down.
I'm going to want him back anyway, so.
Okay, don't go far, Chris.
Don't go far, Chris.
Just as a little reminder for the body of sort of the process we went through a couple of years ago. Well, actually, for those of you who've been here a little bit longer, every year when this assessment is levied, during the first part of my tenure on this body, we heard from a group of residents or property owners in the downtown area who decried the lack of fairness in the boundaries of the downtown improvement district because they were perhaps manufactured to ensure approval 17 years ago. And so we asked the Anchorage Downtown Partnership to, when the reauthorization came up in 2010, to seek to petition to include the entire downtown core in the downtown improvement district. They did that. As Mr. Schutte indicated, they did receive about a 62% approval. There are some people who are still unhappy about being in. Mr. Pino is a good example. I happened to get an email from another non-owner occupied owner of a one-bedroom condo in the Kinnick Arms, and she insisted that it was worth it and that the premium that she's able to charge because of the quality of life downtown more than offsets the cost of the levy and thinks it's appropriate for us to proceed. And besides that, she still lives in the district and comes to my house for dinner. So I kind of got to listen. So with that, we've worked through this very carefully. I think we've come up with a fair system. I respect that some people don't like being in the district, don't like paying it, but we really don't have the option of opting one person out or another. If you're in the geographic boundaries, the rules apply to everybody the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trini.
Chris, last time we changed this, we added the Captain Cook into it. Have you got a response of the Captain Cook owners as to the quality of the service that you're giving them?
Through the chair, the Captain Cook is one of those properties that I'd like to highlight as a turnaround. They were outside of the district for its first 13 years, and they were sort of at the forefront in 2009 and 10 when we were looking at the issue of expanding the boundaries, as saying, yeah, we want to be included. In fact, they're heavily involved in everything that we do. They have employees from Hickle Investment who are running to have a seat on the board. They're very invested in it.
Good, I appreciate that, because that's a real success story for this downtown special assessment district, is that it's now all unified. There's not just one boundary that's for some reason left out. We all know why. But thank you very much for all your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14D, AO number 70, a ordinance authorizing a ground lease agreement between the... Thank you. This item is now before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is now before the body. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14E, AO number 71, an ordinance authorizing a ground lease located on a portion of lot. Thank you. This item is now before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14F, AO number 72, an ordinance authorizing a ground
Waive
lease.
reading.
Look, thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14G, AO number 82, an ordinance authorizing a ground space lease
Wait, read.
located. This item is now before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14H, AO number 74, an ordinance authorizing a ground space lease
Waive
located.
reading.
This item is now before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us 14I, AO number 75, an ordinance authorizing a ground space lease
Waive
located.
reading.
This item is now before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
I just don't want to take the opportunity here too long, but Mr. Vikalis, on all of these tower approvals and things, with Verizon coming into town, are we protected at all from the proliferation of these things popping up all over the place because of the co-location requirement? Or does the co-location requirement, if there's existing tower space available, do they not have to, you know what I'm trying to say here, do they have to negotiate if there's a tower nearby with that person first?
That's correct, and I believe that's what the conditions of the leases are. Is that correct, AWW?
Well, and it's only, I'm happy to see Verizon come into the marketplace, but as you see Verizon coming into play, how will we just not see 12 towers along Eagle River Road?
They have mutual agreements. For example, right now, even though we have leases with one particular communications carrier, they enter into arrangements with others and they stack them on their towers. Obviously, they charge for that service, and I think that's the same case here. In fact, that was asked at a work session not too long ago.
Yeah, so if Verizon says, I want your property on the water tower location, we own the property. If Verizon comes to us and GCI already has that, do we have the authority to say you can put your stuff on that tower?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, we do have co-located communication facilities at various locations around the city.
Is that law that they have to approach you if there's a tower in their service area for that location, or is it not specified that way?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I'm just worried. I mean, we got AT&T starting to ramp up competitively. We got Verizon coming into town, and then if we see a third player into this market, they're going to be everywhere.
Well, I would say that we do have a finite set of Anchorage water and wastewater utility locations. So
Well,
I don't think they're going to be everywhere. They're going to be
They're
where
all
there's
going to be
a-
there unsightly. I just assume they all be on one space together. It's unsightly. But okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Our experience so far is they've been cooperating with
All right.
different carriers.
Well, if we can encourage that, that's good. And everyone seems to be paying the same amount, so there's no, I mean, it's all 14,000 or about. So.
I think Mr. Weaver can shed a little light
Yeah.
for you, Mr. Starr.
I never got this far on the planning and zoning tower ordinance. So.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Starr, basically, collocation's required, and depending on height, if they can have a certain height in districts for towers, and if they want to go an additional height, they have to co-locate. So co-location is definitely required for an additional height,
Okay.
but for the towers themselves, we look at that as well with new towers that there's not current opportunity for them to meet their needs.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for checking into that. Thank you.
Ms. Osiander.
I just wanted Mr. Weaver to come up.
Okay, Mr. Honeman.
Yeah, well, maybe it's, I'm reading with interest that it's somewhere, these numbers are all over the board. I mean, it's, 6,000 for this one, 11,000 for the last one. I'm just curious. I mean, is there some reason that maybe it's just better real estate that they're putting their towers on? It seems to me a tower on a piece of property might be, I mean, why are we getting one for $6,000 and one for 10 or 11 grand? Just curious.
Our disposal method or lease method calls for fair market value, and the value of the different pieces of land are different throughout the community, as well as the size of the land that they actually need.
Okay, so the ones for 11,000, am I to assume it's going to be a larger tower, a bigger space that they're using or something?
I think what you can assume is that the value of the property that it sets on is different than some other location.
Okay.
What we're required to do the fair market value, the appraised value of the property.
Okay.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14J, AO number 76, an ordinance authorizing a lease for the use.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This is now before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14K, AO number 77, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 20. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Trombley.
I have a question for AWW. My question is in regards to page 6 of 29, line 4. What is the
He's trying to get a copy.
Sure. You can see mine if you need to. I just wanted to know what the definition of user is. Because I see on the previous page there's the definition for residential user. Page 6 of 29, line 4, underlines user, takes out discharger.
Through the chair, Mr. Trombley, the user is the industrial discharger in this case, as opposed to the domestic discharger, which is identified as the user on the previous page.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I hate to see AWW busting into people's homes, checking out their discharge areas. That's all. And then one other question for you is, with any new EPA regulation, there seems to me that there would be some sort of rise in cost, especially for you, which to me would go at least to the water rate, or at least the wastewater rate. You see some of the requirements now, such as on page 15 to 29, the discharge on average of, we changed it to 25,000 gallons per day or more of processed wastewater. Can we expect with these regulations a rise in utility rates?
I wouldn't say that the regulations themselves would force that. We have asked in our budget proposal for additional support to our pretreatment program staff. We presently have 2 positions funded, and with increases in regulatory activity and increases in the need for surveillance and monitoring of our industrial dischargers, we feel the need for additional staff there.
So, from my understanding of this, is you can no longer use dilution. It's that term, dilution is the solution to pollution. You can no longer do that. You actually have to treat it. Currently, prior to this regulation, were you using dilution as a method of treating wastewater? And you can no longer do that. Was that going to require additional infrastructure in order to?
Through the chair, dilution has never been a treatment process. It's been a dilution. So It's not something that we've ever encouraged on the part of our industrial wastewater dischargers. In fact, a dilute sewage is harder to treat than a concentrated sewage. The strength of the sewage does affect some of the cost of treatment, but we don't encourage the use of dilution for a treatment process, nor do we look at the well, we do look at the strength of sewage in terms of our permitting, but we don't hang our hat on that, if that makes any sense.
I understand. The reason I ask that is because it says that dilution is prohibited as a substitute for treatment. So I was just curious if we're going to see a raise in rates, but you sound pretty confident you'll be able to absorb that without having to go and increase the rates to meet these regulations.
Well, as I said, we've asked for additional support for our pretreatment program because federal requirements and our need to be vigilant is ever increasing.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr?
This question is more for Mr. Weaver. On this action, the contracting community requires the permitting and filing for dewatering processes through ADEC. Is there anything inside of this that changes the SWEP plan? Any of that? It doesn't reach that far, or does it, in fact, interpret the perhaps dewatering programs? Sometimes the contractors dewater foundations and footings during storms and put it into the city system, but we only have ADEC to call on that. Do you anticipate a change?
This, Mr. Chair, Mr. Starr, this is outside of my realm of knowledge. It would be under Public Works.
I didn't hear the last sentence.
Under Public Works?
Right. So
I'm not familiar with the requirements.
the ADEC requirement to file the SWEP plans?
All right. I am familiar with them, but, not knowledgeable enough to speak to the relationship between this and those.
This action here?
Right.
Okay. So perhaps, is there modifications to the SWEP plans that our contractors are going to have to do if they discharge wastewater dewatering under construction projects into the systems?
I don't know the answer to that. If they're discharging dewatering fluids to the sewer, to the sanitary sewer, that would be covered under this ordinance. But I don't know. Pete, do you have any more thoughts on that?
No, it doesn't affect
While he's coming up, could I get your name for the record?
My name is Brett Jokla. This is Pete Jeske with our Industrial
Thank you.
Program.
Hi. No, it wouldn't affect SWIP plans. The process that we have set up with the utility for construction dewatering is a temporary discharge permit.
Yeah.
And as long as they can meet the limitations that we put in those permits regarding sediment, any petroleum contamination is removed, and that's verified through testing, then those discharges are allowed.
Okay, so sort of status quo with that user community, even though the heightened regulations look like they're going in here. So,
correct.
All right, thank you for your time.
Mr. Trombley?
I'm sorry to do this, Mr. Chairman. I have one more question for you. Page 14 and 29, Section 2, Part B, unanticipated bypass. My concern there, and this is a question for you, is it says the permittee shall notify the utility by phone within 24 hours of the time becomes aware of an unanticipated bypass event. If we have a situation like a 64 earthquake or a major earthquake, is that adequate time? Do you think it should be maybe extended 48 hours? I mean, if we have a major destruction to where needs to be some sort of bypass, do you feel that that's adequate time or too short? I'd hate to see people get fined in that situation for not calling in 24 hours when they can't call or notify.
I believe in a natural disaster like an earthquake, similar to 64, I believe this would be waived.
Well, I understand that we are talking about the federal government, and they have a tendency to not be reasonable, but I appreciate the comments. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
There are no other questions. Ms. Osiander?
I'm sorry, I got Mr. Trombley spurred me onto something here. If there are community septic systems, small companies that are not AWWU, are they governed? Are you their agency, even if?
No, community septic systems would be regulated by the Department of Environmental Conservation, the State Department.
Okay, thanks.
No other questions? Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. We now have before us item 14L, AO number 69, an ordinance amending the zoning map and
Waive
approving.
reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item's before the body.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to postpone this item until the meeting of September 11.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, this item will be postponed to September the 11th. Mr. Flynn? We now have before us item 14M, AO number 187, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $2,900,427.
Waive reading.
This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
Ms. Engel, we made you stay till the end, apparently. I have a general question on this one in M and N, so you combine the answers. Do we supply the morning after pill or abortion counseling through any of these funds or these grants?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, through these grants, we do not.
And that's all. We do through the department. I'm pretty much aware on some of the answers.
We do through the Title X funding, but not through these grants.
Great. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us, where am I at? 14. Turn too many pages. N? Okay, that's what we now have before us item 14N, AO number 188, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $1,028,160 from the
Waive
state.
reading.
Thank you. This item is now before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Ms. Johnston? That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item number 14O, AR number 189, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage adopting.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, testimony is closed.
Move
This
to
is
approve.
before the body. Mr. Flynn.
Mo better, Diane. Mo better. Thank you.
Seeing no one else, please vote. Ms. Johnston. That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to move for immediate reconsideration on 14A. Urge a no vote.
Okay.
What is that?
We have an immediate reconsideration on 14A. Please vote.
Can you please clarify who made the motion and the second? Mr. Trombley?
Mr. Trombley made the motion. Mr. Starr seconded.
Thank you.
I left you yet.
That motion fails 10-1. This concludes our regular agenda. We have no special orders, no unfinished agenda. We're at audience participation. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public participation is closed. Any assembly comments?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that dilution is not the solution to the sewage pollution.
We'll let that reflect on the record. We are adjourned.
I